Most people think growth happens when you learn something new. A new book, a new podcast, a new insight, a new motivational video that hits you at 2 in the morning while your life feels slightly out of control. And for a few minutes, you feel different. You feel awake, like something finally clicked. But then morning comes. You wake up with the same mind, the same habits, the same reactions, the same invisible patterns quietly controlling your life from underneath your awareness. And that's the part nobody wants to talk about. Because real growth is uncomfortable in a way information never is. Information feels clean. Growth feels humiliating. Reading about discipline feels inspiring. Actually becoming disciplined feels brutal. Because the moment behavior enters the picture, your excuses lose their elegance. That's why some people consume self-improvement for 10 years and still panic during small conversations, still procrastinate, still sabotage relationships, still avoid difficult decisions, still need validation from people they don't even respect. Not because they're stupid, because knowledge creates the illusion of movement. Behavior creates actual change, and those are not the same thing. You can understand confidence perfectly and still speak like someone apologizing for existing. You can explain emotional intelligence beautifully and still lose control the moment somebody triggers your ego. You can memorize every productivity system on earth and still spend your night scrolling through people living the life you keep planning. At some point, you realize something painful. Your future is not being built by what inspires you. It's being built by what you repeat. Every day, quietly, almost invisibly. That's why two people can hear the exact same advice and end up with completely different lives. One person feels motivated for an hour. The other changes a behavior. And behavior is where identity begins. Not intention, not imagination, not potential. Behavior. That's why the strongest people you'll ever meet usually speak very calmly about transformation, because they know something most people don't. Real change is rarely dramatic at first. It looks boring. It looks repetitive. It looks invisible. It looks like waking up and doing something uncomfortable before your emotions agree with it. Again, and again, and again. That's the part social media hides from you. Nobody films the ordinary moments that created their power. Nobody uploads the lonely repetitions, the awkward practice, the emotional resistance, the small private decisions that slowly rebuilt their mind. People only show the result, so the world becomes addicted to outcomes while ignoring process. And eventually, people start chasing emotional highs instead of behavioral consistency. That's why motivation became entertainment, not transformation, because transformation asks something from you. It asks you to repeat a behavior long enough for your nervous system to stop resisting it. And honestly, that's where most people collapse. Not at the beginning, in the middle, in the silent phase where nothing feels rewarding yet. That strange period where you're changing internally, but your life still looks the same externally. That phase destroys people psychologically, because humans crave evidence. We want signs, progress, recognition, immediate results. But real growth delays rewards, and that delay exposes who you really are. Most people are not addicted to comfort. They're addicted to emotional certainty. They want guarantees before commitment. They want confidence before action. They want clarity before movement. But life doesn't work like that. The people who actually evolve move while uncertain, which is terrifying, Because uncertainty makes you meet yourself without performance, without excuses, without fantasy. You start noticing patterns you spent years avoiding. How quickly you quit, how easily you escape discomfort, how often you betray your own standards when emotions get heavy. And maybe the hardest realization of all, you begin to understand that your personality is not as fixed as you thought. A huge part of who you call yourself is just repeated behavior, repeated emotional reactions, repeated coping mechanisms, repeated avoidance, repeated stories. That's why change feels threatening. Because when behavior changes, identity starts shaking. And people panic when identity shakes, even if their current identity is destroying them. That's why some people stay loyal to suffering they secretly hate. Because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar growth. Read that again internally. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar growth. That sentence explains more human behavior than most psychology books. People stay in toxic relationships because emotional chaos feels familiar. People stay financially stuck because risk feels unfamiliar. People keep playing small because invisibility protects them from judgment. And the strangest part? They often call this being realistic. But deep down, they are not protecting reality. They are protecting identity. That's why behavior matters more than inspiration. Behavior interrupts identity. Every repeated action sends a message to your brain about who you are, not who you wish to become, who you are. And your nervous system listens more to repetition than imagination. That's why tiny actions become dangerous in the best possible way. A person who keeps promises to themselves for 30 days changes internally. A person who speaks honestly instead of performing changes internally. A person who stops abandoning difficult conversations changes internally. Not because those actions are huge, but because repeated behavior rewires self-perception. And self-perception quietly controls destiny. That's the hidden layer nobody sees. People think behavior changes life directly. Sometimes it does. But first, it changes identity. And identity changes decisions. Then decisions change life. That process takes time, which is exactly why most people never stay consistent long enough to witness the deeper transformation. They stop too early, right before the internal shift begins, right before discipline becomes natural, right before confidence stabilizes, right before emotional control becomes part of their nervous system instead of forced performance. That's a tragedy. People quit during construction because they expected immediate beauty. But real growth looks ugly before it looks powerful. There's a strange loneliness that appears when you start evolving seriously. You notice conversations changing. You notice your tolerance shrinking for fake energy. You stop needing constant attention, constant noise, constant stimulation. And at first, that silence feels uncomfortable because distraction used to protect you from yourself. Now there's nowhere to hide. So you start hearing your real thoughts, and some of them are painful. You realize how much of your life was built around emotional survival instead of truth. How many decisions came from fear? Fear of rejection, fear of being average, fear of not being enough, fear of failing publicly. And suddenly, your old behaviors begin making sense. Not as flaws, as protection mechanisms. That changes everything. Because when you understand your behavior emotionally, you stop fighting yourself blindly. Now you can rebuild consciously. And rebuilding consciously is a completely different kind of power. That's when growth stops being motivational and becomes surgical, precise, intentional, real. You stop asking, what do I feel like doing today? And start asking, what kind of person am I reinforcing right now? That question changes lives, because every action votes for an identity. Every delay, every excuse, every difficult conversation avoided, every promise broken privately, every standard lowered for temporary comfort, it all counts. And people underestimate how deeply the brain tracks repetition. Your mind is always learning from your behavior. Always. Even when you think nothing is happening. That's why self-respect cannot be faked forever. Eventually, your nervous system notices a gap between what you say and what you repeatedly do. And that gap creates internal instability. Anxiety increases. Confidence weakens. Self-trust disappears quietly. Not because you're broken, because your behavior stops supporting your identity. And once self-trust breaks, everything becomes harder. Decision-making, relationships, discipline, leadership, peace. That's why rebuilding self-trust matters more than chasing motivation. Self-trust changes how you walk into rooms, how you speak, how you handle pressure, how you recover from mistakes. People can feel it without understanding why. Because grounded people move differently, not louder, cleaner. There's less internal negotiation happening inside them. Their actions and identities started aligning, and alignment creates calm power. That's a kind of growth nobody can give you through a video. It has to be lived, repeated, practiced when nobody's watching. Especially then, because private behavior always becomes public energy eventually. Always. The way you treat your own mind in private shows up in your eyes, your posture, your decisions, your standards, your presence. Nothing stays hidden forever inside human behavior. And maybe that's a real reason growth scares people so much. Because eventually, you can't lie to yourself anymore. You either became the person you kept talking about, or you didn't. And that truth becomes impossible to ignore. But strangely, that's also where freedom begins. Because once you stop performing growth, you can finally start living it, quietly, without needing applause, without announcing every realization, without turning healing into branding. You simply begin becoming different through repetition, day by day, choice by choice, behavior by behavior, until one morning, you notice something subtle. Your reactions change. Things that used to destroy your peace no longer control you. You recover faster. You speak more honestly. You tolerate discomfort without collapsing emotionally. And the strangest part is, it happened gradually. So gradually you almost missed it. That's real transformation. Not one giant moment. 1,000 invisible decisions nobody clapped for. And maybe that's what real power actually is. Not intensity, not performance, not sounding wise. The ability to repeat aligned behavior long enough for your entire identity to evolve around it.